Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Collision Live. It's me, Daniel Blackaby, here as always, and joined at the desk by the House Harkonnen to my House Atreides, Mr. Samuel David Camp.
It's good to be with you on this year mark of episodes. This is the 52nd episode. So.
Yeah, so we've been doing this thing for a while, and we appreciate those of you that have been with us from the first days, or whenever you decided to join us for these weekly episodes. It's fun. We just, if you haven't joined us for a live stream before, we just kind of look at what's going on in pop culture, either there's trends or newsy stories or just general kind of topics, and kind of approach it from a biblical Christian perspective of how do we kind of engage in the conversations and contribute to it and critique it and just celebrate it when things like Dune come out and we want to talk about it. So we're happy to have you guys join us again. Don't be shy if you are watching us live. Just share your thoughts. Just, if we're talking about Dune or we're talking about Halloween or whatever we're talking about. We'd love to hear from you guys and just gonna have a dialogue with you. But how's it going? This is
It's going well. It's been a big week. I think it's with Dune coming out, and we'll talk about this coming up here. But I feel like it's sort of been, to me, I feel like this kind of marks like theaters being back, or there's something I think different about Dune finally being released. Like, it's been such a hyped movie for so long. It's been delayed and so on, and it's such a meant for movie theaters, and it's just such an epic film.
Yeah, we've been, I don't know. Because I think we've been, even like, a year ago when we started this show, it was already in production and stuff. So we've been talking about it and got delayed.
Yeah.
So, finally we can talk about it as a film that we can see and not just something to look forward to. But again, it's just, it's kind of also marking kind of the home stretch of the year. We're a month away from Halloween, a month away from Thanksgiving, a month away from Christmas. It's crazy. You're kind of entering that fall / winter season.
I've been making a fire in our fireplace about every night now, so it's may not always be cold enough, but it's like, darn it,
it's time whether it is cold enough or not.
Gotta have that wood crackling.
So again, my favorite time of year, so a lot of stuff for us to jump into. But let's kick off the show like we always do with pop culture news. So this is the part of the show where we just look at kind of the news stories, what's going on in pop culture, and then maybe if there's any ones that jump out, we can talk about it. But just kind of keeping our finger on the pulse of what's happening. And there's actually quite a few things that I dug up as I was looking through on the internet this week. First one, kind of an ongoing thing, but the Dave Chappelle versus Netflix controversy. That's been going back and forth. We've talked about that before. But again, that's sort of coming to a head, and he's responding to that and kind of resisting the so-called cancel culture and there's all that drama and stuff. Again, I think it's going to continue to go on, but it's definitely making a lot of the news rounds. The World Series starts today. We live in just south of Atlanta, so I guess we're cheering for the Braves, even though my Giants got knocked out. But again, go Braves. Nothing like some good World Series baseball.
Yeah.
Hayden Christensen, Mr. Anakin Skywalker, a.k.a. Darth Vader, the Lord of the Sith, was just announced that he will reprise his role in the Star Wars Disney Plus show Ahsoka. It was already out that he'd be returning for the Obi-Wan show, but now he's returning as Ahsoka, and not sure how I feel about that.
He's been waiting 20 years.
Yeah, he's been waiting to make his triumphant return. Just when he thought we were done with Darth Vader, he is more popular and present than ever. Another kind of drama, their whole Ruby Rose Batwoman thing. I don't know if you followed any of that story.
No, I missed that.
Again, she left the show, the CW show, about half a year ago. She kind of spoke out, kind of calling out the industry and the production, and Warner Brothers turned around and called her out. And it's just been a big mess, but kind of opening the hood to all the drama that goes on behind the scenes of some of this stuff. One thing that's not as filled with drama, the Eternals. The next MCU movie, I'm not sure exactly when this comes out. I'm guessing soon because they had their world premiere. So there's sort of been the first reactions to this kind of on the internet of what people thought. And it seems like people are digging it. People always seem to like the MCU movies. So I guess I don't know how telling it is that people enjoyed this. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It looks interesting. Something else that was just debuted, the first trailer for Uncharted. Again, based on a video game that I have not played, I'm not familiar with. But this has Tom Holland, Mr. Spider-Man himself. and it basically looks like Indiana Jones meets National Treasure with a young actor. It looks fun. So I don't know if it's faithful to the game or anything like that, but again, it looks fun. And speaking of games, N64 games are now available to play on Nintendo Switch. I subscribed so that I can introduce my kids to some of that sweet, sweet nostalgic gaming, such as Zelda. And maybe the last story, which is maybe the biggest one of all, is the whole the tragedy that happened on the film set, kind of Alec Baldwin, kind of Western movie where a gun that was supposed to be a prop was not a prop, went off, killing the cinematographer behind the camera and injuring the director. And it's just been a big, they're still investigating what went wrong, but it definitely seems like the kind of incident that's going to have long-lasting ripples in the industry and kind of how they approach those sorts of issues. But what do you think? You hear those, or any of these that jump out?
Yeah, well, I mean, not to focus on the negative, but the shooting of the cinematographer, Helena Hutchins by Alec Baldwin, is turning into quite a dumpster fire. I've been following some of that, and it's just like, it seems like there's likely gross negligence involved, and it's a real shame, and yeah, so that's really too bad that that's going on. Hopefully there's some good that can come out of it. Yeah, so it's always rough to hear.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of and again, I won't stay upon my soapbox for long, but kind of that story jumped out to me too, just because it's kind of, as culture tends to do lately, being kind of dragged into kind of making it political by a lot of people that are the ones that are most vocal about complaining that Hollywood is all political. And I think it's just important to, it doesn't matter what the actors involved or people, what they believe or who they voted for, but just to accept this is a tragedy, and that, the more important things than just sort of dumping on people that we don't agree with and kind of using it for political stuff. But yeah, it definitely seems like there's going to be a lot of changes based on that. But speaking of changes and changes in the industry, Denis Villeneuve is not happy about changes. The streaming wars and taking away from the theater experience. His movie Dune, he's being very vocal about, hey, see this thing on the biggest possible screen you can. Don't watch this on your iPhone or your smartwatch. But Dune, finally, like you said, we've been waiting for this movie to come out for a while. One of the most anticipated films, kind of in recent memory. Other than like a big property like a Endgame or something that people have been building. It's sort of like kind of an original property. This thing's been hyped by for a long time, and it came out. And again, we encourage you guys to check out. We reviewed it for The Collision. I did a video review. I wrote a review, kind of did, an in-depth thing. But because we were both excited about Dune, and it's just it's a great movie. It's something that I think a lot of people are talking about, and we haven't had the chance to really just talk about it together. That we thought we'd just take our first topic just to sort of talk about Dune, kind of what we thought of the film. Some of the stuff with the adaptations. Again, if you guys saw the movie, we won't be getting into spoilers if you didn't see it, so don't freak out and turn us off. But if you did see it, go ahead and let us know what you thought of the film if you enjoyed it. But what do you think? So Dune, did it live up to your hype? Did it live up to your expectations?
I think I would say it did live up to the hype for sure. It's hard because it is such like a sort of a big property. There's so much backstory. There's all this information that you think like, well, how on earth do you get all that? Like, the book is huge, and try to get all that into one movie, that seems pretty impossible. So I think the one thing that I didn't realize until seeing it is that this is part one, and fingers crossed there will be a part two coming out. But I loved it. I thought, especially, I think visually, and Denis is, I think, well known for sort of his visuals, and I think it was Deakins who was the DP for this. It's just spectacularly beautiful, and I think that's the first thing. And then like Hans Zimmer did the score, and it was just, I don't know, I think it was really amazing and very different from any other sort of sci-fi movies that have come out. It's a huge contrast to like any of the Marvel, Guardians of the Galaxy or any of their sort of space stuff. And you can see sort of this as the source material for like so many sci-fi movies and
you
shows.
Definitely see like in Star Wars, like Tatooine, like this book, I don't remember the exact years they all came out. I believe it came out about 15-ish years before the first Star Wars movie came out. It was, definitely it was out there. It was influential for things like Star Wars, and even if Star Wars ended up being a very different type of sci-fi film. But I agree. I think this is sort of it's a film that in some ways it's kind of amazing that it exists. Like it's,
Yeah.
the book is, I've read the book. I wasn't like a fanatic, read it way back in the day, and I read it maybe three years ago for the first time and enjoyed it. But it's like a dense book. It's a very philosophical book. It's not one that, I think the movie they sort of inserted more like action and stuff because they kind of had to, because it's a blockbuster movie, and you can't just have like character. They cut out a lot of the scenes where it's just like a bunch of the nobles and stuff sitting around tables and having talks about like philosophical stuff. Like they kind of cut some of that out and it's like, hey, here's Aquaman with a sword, go fight down a hallway, and trying to kind of spice it up, if you will. But it's a. Like I said in my review, not to steal everything that I said, if you want to check that out, but visually, this is a masterpiece. Like this thing looks incredible. You can see why Villeneuve doesn't want you to watch this, on your tiny screen. He wants you to see it in like the IMAX surround sound, everything, because visually, this is one of the most incredibly looking movies I've seen in, as far as I can remember. It almost reminds me of Avatar. Not saying that the movies are the same level of quality, but it's like that immersiveness of like this is just technology pushed to the limit.
You always see like the scale, and I think that's something that Villeneuve does really well. Is like you always you feel a sense of scale. It seems like in all of his shots, like it's just like, wow, this building is huge, or these dunes are huge, or like you always get a sense of like how big a place is or how small it is.
Yeah, and even like the ships and stuff. And I think in some ways that's sort of what helps it be so like kind of otherworldly. Like you really feel, get the sense these are, there's these characters and they are in this massive world. Like, there's dwarfed by the worms, by the spaceships, by the by all of that. And I think as far as just like the story, I think part of the reason I enjoyed the book and why some people have not enjoyed the book maybe is that it is like a messier story. Like it's not, I know we were talking about, kind of the other day, as far as like the, Paul, like, is he a Christ figure? What does that really mean? And maybe at some point we can just do a deep dive into what the Christ figure in cinema and stuff is. But in a lot of ways, like Herbert, like the author of the book, was almost like deconstructing, not in like a postmodern way, but like that image of like, here's sort of this Messiah character. And instead of giving you the traditional, very noble, very good, you sort of get a more, I guess, earthy, like, angsty,
flawed.
Maybe he'll save people, but he'll also destroy people in the process. Like it is kind of messy, and I think that's why I was thinking of coming out of this movie like as a Christian, why it's not as necessarily an easy one, even if it is sort of like a rewarding one to wrestle with.
Yeah, well, and like I think you mentioned this the other day when we were talking about it, but just even sort of the messiness of sort of that Christ figure with all the. I forget the name of the sect of like witches or whoever.
Bene Gesserits.
They're kind of going around planting all of these ideas and these prophecies. Like, their time scale is measured in like millennia, not like years. And so there is sort of this like almost creation of this mythic character, this Christ figure that you sort of see. And I think that's what your point to sort of the deconstructing the Christ figure, the original author did, but this idea that like, is he a Christ figure, or is he just sort of a pawn in the Jesuits' scheme to sort of, gain control of the whole galaxy or all this kind of stuff. And so I think it's kind of an interesting, like, nothing is just sort of like, this is the good guy, this is the bad guy. Like it's all a bit more complicated. But I like that. I think it makes it more interesting for sure.
Yeah, and it definitely makes, at least for me, it makes you think a little more than just like, oh, well, there's the guy he's sort of the again, I have like my favorite story, that will ever be told is The Lord of the Rings, and that follows a very classic, in some ways that is sort of the framework that like the Dune is sort of playing around with. So I have nothing against, like, I don't think all heroes and stuff need to be flawed and angsty,
right.
And like, but the reason I enjoy sort of the more kind of heady messiness of a story like Dune is because it makes you think. Like I was thinking even just sort of the Messiah role, and like not that it's analogous to like Jesus, but but Jesus in like the garden, and take this cup from me, and just sort of that the destiny and like the kind of that he has to go and the consequences of that and all that plays into it. It just sort of offers interesting kind of visuals and story tidbits, even if it's not like some kind of clear allegory. But again, the assumption is I think there will be a sequel.
Yeah, I would.
I can't imagine.
I can't imagine not.
Yeah.
I think they have to. I feel like at this point.
Yeah,
it does sort of stop mid-story. So
yeah, and I think because I told Sam before when he got here to the studio that in my review I wasn't super pleased with this, like where it stopped. I felt like it kind of abruptly, and it just seemed like it felt more like an incomplete like here's part one of one big movie, and we ran out of time. Cut it here.
Yeah.
But then I did see the second half with my wife and some friends when they were watching it on their own later, and kind of knowing where it stops, it didn't really bother me. In some ways, I think it'd be like marketing, come see the Lord of the Rings without telling you that it's just like the Fellowship of the Ring. Like it's just I think some of it they marketed this as like Dune, and obviously if you follow the industry, you knew that they're talking about a sequel, which means it probably ends halfway through.
Yeah.
So I do think sort of judging the story part is going to be hard until you get the sequel, until you get the full arc, because you don't get a full character arc for any of the characters. But the visuals you can judge, and it looks incredible.
Yeah.
And
it's amazing, and I do think the actors all did a really great job as well. I think there were great performances throughout. I think what was it Ferguson? You were saying Rebecca Ferguson.
To me, she's the standout. Just the nuance, and she's an interesting character in the book.
Yeah,
but just sort of that nuance, that complicated character of she's this hardened sort of witch lady that has no emotions and above transcends her kind of carnal emotions, but then she's also like a mother that wants to protect her son, and just this tension. This movie's stacked. The people in the movie, they're all big name, recognizable actors. But yeah, I think it did live up to the hype. But we're curious to let you guys let us know if you saw the movie. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you hate where it stopped? Or are you pumped to watch it again on your iPhone? Let us know all of those things.
It's never going to get old.
But speaking of all-time classics and engaging cinema, we have our next segment called Host Corner. Well, take it away, Sam.
All right. So for this week's My Host Corner, I'm going to go way back in the archives, and we're going to talk about Robin Hood, the classic Disney, and I would argue the very best Disney cartoon ever made. And I probably won't even take up an entire minute with this, but all that to say, I think if Robin Hood is not your favorite Disney cartoon, then I just don't know if we can be friends. And so, but I don't know. I was my 2-year-old was watching some of this the other day, and it just reminded me of just how fantastic this movie is, from the characters to the music. I just think there's no one in particular thing, but I just think it's the greatest cartoon ever made, and that's pretty much all I have to say about it.
Well, I think too. I guess I'm stealing some of your time. It's an underrated film too. You hear people talk about all their favorite classic Disney movies and stuff, and you sort of forget that that Robin Hood is
classic Disney.
Is classic Disney.
Well, I think people are quick to go to all the princess movies and sort of those types, or maybe Lion King or whatever, and hey, those are fine, but I think Robin Hood is the greatest Disney cartoon ever made.
Because I forget when why it came up, but literally 2 days ago, before I knew you were talking about Robin Hood, I was with my kids and I was with my mom, and we were talking. Somehow it came up, and we were all singing the "Oodaladi, Oodaladi, God, what a day!" And
it's just good. I mean, it's just some of the greatest movies ever made.
Yeah. So I believe it was one of the first things that when we got our Disney Plus subscription, we sat my kids down. They didn't have a choice in the matter. They had to obey their parents and watch Robin Hood.
Well, that's just good parenting, Daniel. So
that is good parenting.
And if you haven't seen it, shame on you. Go watch it now. So.
And Monty says yes with multiple S's, was it Call of the Snake? Robin Hood is the best classic animated Disney movie. And I feel like it is like underrated because we don't talk about it, but like those, like the enlightened ones, like there are those out there that do acknowledge the greatness of that movie. I don't know. Are we getting a live action? Like Disney's been remaking like Lion King and Jungle Book.
I hope not, because that would just like I wouldn't watch it. Like there just wouldn't be a reason to watch a live action.
I'll say I won't watch it, but I would definitely go watch that in theaters to see what it was.
Just to see how they ruined it.
But another question that people have to ask as Christians about engaging with it or not engaging with it is Halloween, the spooky season.
The scariest time of the year.
The scariest time of year. It's one of those, and I don't know if it's just because in some ways Halloween seems like it's died in recent years, and a lot of that obviously is COVID, but it hasn't maybe been as much of a topic. Maybe we've moved on to new things to argue about and debate. Maybe everything's been said, but I know that Halloween still is one of those holidays that makes a lot of Christians a little squeamish. Are we introducing? Is it a gateway for the occult for our children to go trick or treating around the neighborhood? What do you do with a thing like Halloween? And Halloween is on Sunday, so this is our last episode before Halloween. So I thought we'd just talk about that. What is the again? To be upfront, like I don't think there's necessarily a wrong answer or that we all necessarily need to agree on this. I think it is the concerns for it are valid. I think the people that aren't concerned have valid reasons too. But so what do you why don't you get us started with this? Like how do you approach something like Halloween?
Yeah, well, I think something like this, like I grew up not really celebrating it much. We didn't do dressing up and trick or treating. However, I do think it's I think it's one of those holidays. It's sort of what you make it, right? Like I think people can be very like resistant to anything sort of Halloween related. On the other hand, I think if you make it a fun time to dress up in costumes and hang out with your friends, like I don't see anything inherently wrong with that. And I think most people when they're celebrating, culturally speaking, I think it's going to be more like, hey, it's just a fun time to dress up. There's something I think somewhat cathartic about like costumes, and like you kind of get to inhabit a different persona for a little while, for an evening or whatever. And I think there's something just there's a lot of fun to be had, and I think it can be done in a good way. It doesn't mean that like you want to be in the occult and like you're looking to see how you can master your witch's brew or whatever. Like I think there is a sort of separation between like the actual like occult and just like the holiday that is Halloween.
Yeah, because to me that's what it comes down to. Like again, if you didn't grow up celebrating as much, we grew up going all in to Halloween, and we always dressed up and did the candy and the pillowcases and just loaded up on way too much sugar. But I think sort of the way I've navigated a bit is like the occult, like just this kind of dark spirituality, witchcraft, all that stuff is kind of unquestionably anti-biblical. It's wrong. Christians need to call that out and to resist that. And I don't think that's in question. The question is like, does Halloween as we celebrate it in 2021 in America, is that overlapping with the occult that we that we do push it, or is it separate now? Is it sort of its own monster, if you will? I think as far as like again, I've written kind of more in depth on Halloween before, but like in philosophy, like the genetic fallacy is sort of the idea that you sort of wrongly judge something today based on like its roots, like
how it started,
rather than kind of what it is now. It's like, well, back this many years ago, like it used to be connected to this, and like therefore you have to judge the current. And I was just sort of doing a bit of a deep dive the other day as far as like some of that kind of the genetic fallacy into sort of Christianity as a religion that sort of is known for redeeming and changing the origins things. I was thinking like the cross, like just what would like people in the first century think to like.
If you
know.
if you adorned yourself with a
Yeah,
cross,
hey, look at that! I'm wearing a cross on my neck. It's like, oh yeah,
like that's pretty
my
like
grandfather was brutally murdered in one of those things. Like but obviously
Yeah.
it means something different, even if the roots of that was like death. And I was thinking even just like Sunday, the day of the Lord, the day we or evangelicals go and Protestants go to church. Sunday is literally the day of the sun. It is named after the pagan kind of Greek god, the cult of the sun. And I found a quote from Saint Jerome, who's one of the early church fathers, kind of talking about that. Hey, this is like a pagan day, Sunday, the name of it, where he says, if pagans call the Lord's day the day of the sun, we willingly agree. For today the light of the world is raised. Today is revealed the Son of Justice with healing in his rays. Basically saying, hey, this is Sunday started as a pagan thing, but we worship, the God of light, this kind of the light of the world has come. So we're going to claim that and make it our Christian holiday and ignore the pagan roots of it. And again, even like Christmas is based on like winter solstice, which is a pagan thing. And Christians are like, hey, this is when we celebrate it. Now we're going to celebrate, make this all about Jesus. And for me, that's sort of what Halloween, not that we make Halloween like into like a, it's not like we celebrate it like it's like a Christian necessarily connotations of a holiday, but it is something that can, I think, be redeemed in a more wholesome without having to accept like, well, but it might have come from pagan roots.
Yeah, and again, I think that just kind of goes back to like it is what you make it in a lot of ways. And I think, obviously, I think that can only go so far. Like there's maybe certain things that's like, well, you can't really like, maybe there's certain limitations to that, but I think more broadly as a culture, I think it can be just a fun time to dress up, to hang out with friends. It is sort of like fall harvest, and so there's, all of that sort of just the connotations, the changing of the seasons. I just think it's a time to celebrate and to be with friends and family, and I don't see it being a huge issue. But I can understand, if people don't want to participate in it, then I think that's like, don't participate in it. Like,
yeah,
I think that's fine.
You're not fulfilling your Great Commission as a Christian if you do not go trick or treating. It's not like a holiday like that. It's more the like, again, even just growing up as a Christian family that celebrated Halloween, there were those that didn't, and even in the church I grew up in, they used to always like plan like a youth event like on Halloween. That was they bring in some guy to talk about the evils of the occult, and it was always this like clear dividing of like those that weren't there, are celebrating the Devil's Day, and those that are there would judge those, and those that were trick or treating would judge the people that were at church as being all, you killjoys, and it was it became an issue, like sort of discord, when really it wasn't an issue. Like,
and I think that's the thing too. Is oftentimes when you kind of make something an issue, I think you're sort of doing the opposite of what you think you're doing. So like if you try to be like, oh well, if you celebrate Halloween, it's you're dabbling in the occult or whatever. It's like, well, like you're not celebrating the occult, and by you sort of trying to like get people not to celebrate it, or saying that if you do, then that's somehow dangerous, or sort of dancing with the devil in some way, then I think it just you bringing up all of those aspects of it, I think, make that more of a issue than it would otherwise be.
Yeah, it kind of makes it like a divisive thing, rather than just sort of a liberty issue that, hey, if you celebrate it, go do that. If you don't, then go celebrate Christmas. It's coming up pretty soon. Like, I think there's more danger in like dividing the church and turning Christian against Christian than there is with like having my 6-year-olds dress up as a knight and get some Kit Kat bars. Like,
yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily going to be damaging, but I do think like the divisiveness and some of it I think is just like it's almost like a technicality, because like we both went to our church's kind of fall festival thing, and like at some point maybe this is a soapbox for me, but like it's basically you dress up. It happens to fall right around Halloween. Like, you're in costumes. There's candy. You go and like trunk or treat or whatever you do.
There's
you carve pumpkins. Like, it's sort of like it's everything about Halloween, but like we just don't call it that. And again, I think that's fine. I don't think churches need to I'm not like gonna crusade. Churches need to call it Halloween festival. I don't care what they call it, but it's just sort of that idea that like you're basically celebrating it, but like you're just sort of like almost like you're putting all the power in like, the name. Like as long as you don't call it Halloween, then it won't be evil.
Yeah. The day that shall not be named, come and get candy and dress as your favorite character.
Yeah,
you know?
this October 31st, we thought, hey, let's just celebrate fall.
Yeah.
Again, and I have no problem with churches doing that. Our kids love that. We probably just because of COVID. I don't know if we'll be trick-or-treating this year, so it was a great time to make those memories with I'm glad our church did that, and more churches. And maybe they'll be filling that role as less people trick-or-treat. I think maybe Halloween will become like more of like an outreach where people go do that at churches rather than in the community.
And I think that is already happening. I do think more and more churches are like that's sort of the thing. And I think concerned parents are like, well, yeah, I can keep an eye on my kids. It's all in one place. Like I don't have to worry about them like roaming the neighborhood and, worrying about them, getting into trouble. Like I think for parents, even if they're, non-churched or not Christian, it's almost a win-win for them as well. It's like, well, we can still celebrate Halloween but it's all kind of contained and, safe and all that good stuff. So
which is just funny. Who would have thought, 10 years ago that, Halloween would be a good outreach thing where everyone flocks to the church.
Yeah.
But again, I do think it is a Christians should have those conversations and come up with and whether, kind of between you and God, if you decide that this is something that you don't feel comfortable with, then that's fine. If you say, yeah, I do feel comfortable with it, that's fine too. But I do think it's those sort of holidays or issues are things that Christians should be, knowledgeable about and do some thinking, and some prayer about. But let us know, how you grew up or, your plans for this Halloween and whether you have reasons to not do it, whether you have reasons to do it or just any kind of experiences. And let us know why you were dressing up as a big giant sandworm this year.
Yeah.
You cowards. But so this week at the Collision, speaking of sandworms, like I said, we got several things kind of new content, new stuff going for you. We got several reviews. The first one is The Christmas Pig. The new J.K. Rowling book came out 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
We were talking about Halloween, but it's never too early to still talk about Christmas. Hey, if Walmart can put decorations up in like July, then we can talk about Christmas books. So I did a review for this book. There's a video form and a written on our website, thecollision.org.
Yeah.
So if you're curious about the book, I enjoyed it quite a bit. We can check out my thoughts on that. And then, like I said, Dune, we talked about a bit on the show, but I do a bit of a deeper dive into that as far as sort of, what some of the themes are and kind of walking through some of those issues on maybe a deeper level, both on our YouTube channel, a video, and then a written on our collision.org if you want to do the words or do both. See what I think in both formats. Again, we encourage you guys, let us know what you thought of both those things. We do have some new articles coming out. There'll be probably an article coming out tomorrow, kind of just looking at how do Christians respond in sort of a culture that seems obsessed with tearing stuff down. What's sort of the response to that? How can we be a faith that builds up when everyone else is tearing down? So keep your eye open for that. That'll probably be dropping tomorrow or some other day this week. But
in the future.
Yes, someday that's not today. Anything?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I just fall is probably my favorite time of the year. Not least of which because it's fire season, and so I love fires and s'mores and all the fun stuff that goes with it. But I think having Dune out and I don't know, I think it's an exciting time of year, and we'll see. We've got some great new movies on the horizon as well, and so I'm excited.
Yeah, things are definitely in full gear. It's hoodie weather, which is the best kind of weather,
yep.
so I'm enjoying it. But again, appreciate you guys checking out, joining us again. Encourage you, if you haven't already, we'd love for you to subscribe to our channel, like our Facebook page, wherever you're watching us, and just sort of join what we're doing here at the Collision. Again, got a lot of stuff coming up before the end of the year. We'd love to have you just join us in that. But most of all, guys, stay safe, enjoy your Halloween, however you decide to celebrate it, and continue to collide with your world for Christ.